The wind howled like a wounded machine, tearing across the frozen plains of Cathara Prime. Shards of ice glittered under the dying light of a crimson sun, painting the world in shades of rust and sorrow. Sergeant Marcus Hawk Jefferson trudged through the storm, armor cracked and leaking warmth, pulse rifle limp in his hand. He could taste iron in the air, the bitter mix of blood and battery dust. The battle was over, but the silence afterward was worse. "Command, this is Hawk," he rasped, voice trembling through static. "Anyone receiving?" Only the wind replied. His visor flickered, half frozen, and for a moment he saw his reflection. A black man with eyes carved from endurance, lips dry, and breath fogging like smoke from an old barbecue pit back in Atlanta. He smiled faintly at the memory, though the cold bit deeper. "Ain't no way Grandma would have let me freeze," he muttered. "Said the cold ain't got nothing on a soul that still burns." Then came the sound, soft, high, almost a cry. He turned, senses scanning. Through the haze, something crawled toward him, limping, trembling. An alien, Cathari. Her skin shimmered like opal dust, cracked from frost. She collapsed before him, clutching something wrapped in membrane and cloth. Marcus stepped closer, rifle raised, instincts kicking in. But when she looked up, her eyes, wide and dark like a storm before rain, pleaded, not threatened. "Human," she whispered in broken English. "My hatchling is cold. Please warm him." Marcus froze. In her trembling arms was a tiny creature, barely breathing, its skin pale and glistening. He felt the words like a weight pressing against his ribs. "Ma'am," he said softly, lowering his weapon, "I ain't supposed to—" She pushed the bundle toward him, voice cracking. "Please, he will die." The code of war screamed in his head. Do not assist alien life during containment operations, but something deeper, something older, overrode it. A memory of his mother's hands tucking him in on a stormy night, his grandmother humming gospel while the world outside thundered. Marcus dropped his rifle. He removed his armor plate, unclasped the temperature lining, and pressed the baby against his chest. The cold burned at first, then softened as the warmth spread. The child stirred weakly. The alien mother exhaled, her body trembling. "Warmth," she whispered. "You carry warmth." "I do my best," he murmured. He looked at her, her breathing shallow, her color fading. "Stay with me. We'll get you both out." She tried to smile, but her strength was gone. Protect him. Human warmth. Strong. Her voice dissolved into the wind, and her eyes dimmed like stars swallowed by dawn. Marcus knelt in the snow, the child's pulse faint against his heartbeat. For a long moment the universe seemed still. Then, from somewhere deep in his soul, a voice rose, his grandmother's again. "When you see life in front of you, baby, you don't ask what color it bleeds, you just help it breathe." He wrapped the child tighter, standing tall against the storm. "All right, little man," he said, forcing a small grin. "Guess it's just you and me now." Above him the storm raged like judgment. The horizon glowed with the wreckage of the human outpost, orange against the violet sky. He started walking, every step heavy but certain. He didn't know where he was headed or if command would even let him live after this. But he knew one thing. No order could erase what was right. He whispered to the baby, voice trembling but firm, "We'll find shelter. I'll keep you warm." The baby let out a small sound, halfway between a sigh and a hum. Marcus smiled. For the first time since the battle, he felt something pierce the cold. Not sunlight, not fire, but purpose. Before we continue this journey of courage and connection, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Stories like this one remind us that even in the coldest corners of the galaxy, human warmth still matters. And with that, Marcus Jefferson disappeared into the storm, armor cracked, heart burning, carrying a fragile life that would change everything. The cold cut deep into Marcus's bones as he trudged across the broken plains, clutching the small bundle against his chest. The child's faint warmth was his only proof that something still lived in this frozen graveyard. Every breath came out in clouds, each step sinking into snow that swallowed the world whole. He followed the faint trail of wreckage, the twisted remains of drop pods and blackened armor, hoping to find shelter before his suit fully failed. "Hang in there, little one," he murmured. "We're gonna make it. Ain't no storm strong enough to stop us." His voice cracked, but the rhythm of his words, that old southern hum he carried from home, steadied his heart. He thought of his grandmother again, how she used to wrap him in old quilts that smelled of lavender and fried catfish. "Warmth ain't just heat, baby," she'd say. "It's love remembering your name." Marcus smiled through cracked lips. He wasn't sure if she'd understand what he was doing now, carrying an alien child through a battlefield. But he liked to think she'd nod and say, "That's the Jefferson way." He found the entrance to a half-collapsed supply station buried under frost. With one shoulder he forced the hatch open. The stale air inside hit him with a wave of chemical cold. He scanned the shadows, rifle ready, before easing down onto the metal floor. The child whimpered softly. Marcus peeled off another piece of armor, wrapping it around the tiny body. "There you go," he whispered. "Ain't got no blanket, but I got heart, and that's better than any heater." The alien's skin shimmered faintly, a pulse of light like veins glowing beneath crystal. Marcus watched, fascinated, then exhaled in relief. The baby was stabilizing, breath evening out. For a while the only sounds were wind against metal and the slow rhythm of two heartbeats. One human, one not. He leaned back, exhaustion pressing against him like gravity. His hands trembled from cold and adrenaline. The child moved, its small fingers curling around his glove, surprisingly strong. The touch sent a shiver through him, not from chill, but from something deeper. Connection. "You don't even know me," Marcus whispered. "Don't even know if I'm the reason your people hurt. But you trust me anyway." He laughed softly, almost bitter. "Guess that's more faith than most humans got left." The storm outside roared louder, shaking the structure. He shut his eyes, listening to the rhythm of the wind. Somewhere far away, radio static cracked through his helmet, faint voices, distorted but human. "Survivor, Sector 4, hold position." He tried to answer, but his comms flickered out again. "Figures," he muttered. "Just you and me, Tavi." The name slipped out naturally, and he froze, realizing it fit. "Yeah," he said softly, smiling to himself. "Tavi, short, easy, feels right." The baby stirred, making a low chirp that almost sounded like agreement. Marcus chuckled quietly. "See? You got taste already." He reached for his pack, tore open a ration seal, and smeared the nutrient paste onto his glove. "Let's see if this'll help." The hatchling's tongue flickered against his hand, tasting, then feeding weakly. The sound, soft, determined, filled the cramped room with life. Marcus leaned his head back, letting the moment sink in. He felt the ache in his chest ease just a little. Out there, the universe was cold, distant, ruled by protocol and fear. But right here, in this forgotten corner of ice, warmth had found a home. "You know," he said quietly, almost to himself, "folks back home used to say family ain't always blood. Sometimes it's who you suffer with, who you protect when it's easier not to." He looked down at the child, alien, fragile yet so alive, and nodded. "Guess that makes us kin now, huh?" The baby's faint hum answered him, a sound like the low note of a cello vibrating through the air. He smiled, pulling the armor tighter around them both. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that ruined shelter, a single spark of warmth refused to die. And though Marcus didn't yet know it, that spark and that small act of human touch would ignite a fire across two worlds. By the time rescue arrived, the storm had calmed into a grey hush. The dropship's floodlights sliced through the mist, washing over Marcus as he stood outside the shelter, the hatchling strapped against his chest with torn webbing. He looked half frozen, armor cracked open like a shell, breath rasping in the cold. When the hatch dropped, voices shouted his name. "Sergeant Jefferson, you're alive!" Sergeant LaShonda Brooks sprinted toward him, her braid frozen stiff against her armor. "Lord, you look like death warmed over." Marcus managed a grin. "Guess death didn't like my company." LaShonda's eyes landed on the small shape in his arms. "What the hell is that?" Marcus held the bundle closer. "He's alive. That's all that matters." Jefferson, came a new voice, calm, clipped. Dr. Imani Wade, the unit's medic, stepped forward. We've got wounded humans waiting for evac. You're telling me you carried that instead? Marcus's jaw tightened. Her mother died in the snow. Asked me to keep him warm. You would have done the same. Imani's eyes softened, but she didn't answer. The others exchanged glances, half disbelief, half awe. The unspoken rule was clear. No alien interference. The war was still fresh, the peace talks fragile. Marcus had broken the line. As the dropship rumbled to life, LaShonda helped him climb aboard. The warmth inside hit like a wave, but it didn't melt the tension. Command would want answers, and no amount of good intention could rewrite the code. Marcus sat in silence, the hum of the engines filling the space. The baby, Tavi, stirred beneath his armor. He could feel the faint rhythm of its breathing, syncing with his heartbeat. LaShonda sat across from him, shaking her head slowly. "You're in deep this time, Hawk," she said quietly. "They ain't gonna like this story." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "Since when did doing what's right need a good story?" Imani turned from the medbay console. "Since people stopped listening." The words stung more than they should have. He knew she was right. Compassion didn't fit well on military reports. When they landed at the base, the air inside the hangar was heavy with exhaust and authority. Colonel Merrin stood waiting, tall and stone-faced, flanked by two officers. His uniform was pristine, his expression unreadable. "Sergeant Jefferson," he began, voice carrying like frost. "You disobeyed direct evacuation orders. Explain yourself." Marcus straightened. "Sir, I found a civilian, Cathari species, dying on the field. She had a hatchling. You assisted an alien during containment operations," Merrin interrupted. "That's a breach of Article 12. "Yes, sir," Marcus said, holding the colonel's gaze. "And I'd do it again." A ripple of whispers passed through the hangar. Merrin's face tightened. "You risked human lives for an alien infant?" Marcus didn't flinch. "No, sir, I risked mine, nobody else's." He took a step forward, lowering his voice, but not his conviction. "If mercy's a crime, then I'm guilty with pride." For a long moment, silence ruled. Then Merrin turned away, muttering to his aide. "Quarantine the creature. Confine Sergeant Jefferson to debrief until further notice." LaShonda's hand brushed his shoulder as they escorted him out. "You made a choice," she whispered. "Now make it mean something." In the holding quarters, Marcus sat on the edge of the bunk, staring at the metal floor. Through the glass wall he could see the med team working on Tavi, their movements cautious, clinical. The child's glow flickered faintly under the lights. Imani entered quietly, carrying a steaming mug. "Hot, calf. You look like you need it." He took it, nodding. "Appreciate it." She hesitated, then added, "You saved something today, even if they can't see it yet." Marcus stared through the glass, the sound of machinery humming steady. "They will," he said softly. "One day they'll see what warmth can do." And though he didn't know what waited beyond that door, punishment, exile, or worse, Marcus knew this truth. Mercy wasn't weakness. It was the beginning of strength. The hum of the ship Umoja filled the air like a heartbeat, steady and mechanical. Marcus sat on a narrow cot in the medical bay, stripped of his armor for the first time in days. The cold metal walls reflected the dim lights, making everything feel sterile, distant. Across the room, behind a transparent barrier, Tavi rested in an incubator, a shimmering cocoon of pale blue light. He couldn't stop watching. Every flicker of movement, every pulse of glow under the alien's translucent skin drew his attention. Imani adjusted the readings beside him, her voice low. "Temperatures stable, oxygen levels holding. Whatever you did out there worked." Marcus rubbed his rough palms together. "Didn't feel like much, just tried to keep him breathing." "That's exactly what it was," Imani said softly. "You kept him breathing." The ship's engines groaned beneath them, shaking slightly. Outside, space stretched silent and endless, stars scattered like broken glass. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, mind circling the same questions. What was he supposed to do now? Command hadn't said much since the hearing, just that he was to stay on board until further notice. isolation disguised as mercy. He turned as Lashonda entered, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Well, look at you, Mr. Warmth himself." "Whole fleet's talking about the man who hugged a lizard baby through a blizzard." Marcus let out a short laugh. "Glad to know my career's now a punchline." Lashonda leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. "You think that's a bad thing? Folks been out here fighting so long they forgot what kindness looks like. You gave 'em something to talk about besides body counts." He studied her face, then looked back at Tavi. "Feels strange. Back home, we had this saying, you protect what can't protect itself. Grandma said it came from the old days, when family meant survival. Guess I took it a bit too far." Lashonda's smile softened. "Maybe just far enough." Imani checked her tablet again. "He's responding to your voice, you know. Every time you talk, his vitals spike." Marcus blinked. "You saying he understands me?" "Maybe not the words," Imani replied. "But tone? Rhythm? Could be. Remember, he heard you for hours in that storm. Might have learned your sound before anything else." Marcus looked at the incubator, a flicker of light reflecting in his eyes. "Guess that makes us family of sorts." Lashonda tilted her head. "Family's a dangerous word out here." "Yeah," he said, voice low but steady. "So is cold." Silence stretched for a moment, filled only by the hum of the ship. Marcus stood, crossing to the barrier. The glass felt cool against his hand. Inside, Tavi stirred, turning toward him. The glow under the alien's skin brightened, faintly pulsing in time with Marcus's heartbeat. Imani watched, whispering, "He's sinking to you." Marcus smiled faintly. "Maybe warmth travels both ways." Lashonda exhaled. "Command doesn't know what to do with you, Hawk. They can't punish compassion without looking like fools. Word is Merrin's sending orders soon." Marcus didn't look away from the hatchling. "Whatever comes, I'll face it. Ain't the first time I stood in front of cold judgment." Imani closed her tablet, her expression gentler now. "You know, when I was little, my mama worked nights at Grady Hospital in Atlanta. She said people ain't born heroes. They just get tired of seeing others freeze." Marcus chuckled quietly. "Your mama sounds like mine." "She'd like you," Imani said. He nodded, eyes still fixed on the incubator. "Hope Tavi gets to meet someone like her one day." The glow from the chamber flickered again, faint but rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat answering his words. The room felt less cold, the air somehow softer. Marcus whispered, "Stay strong, little man, we're just getting started." Lashonda tapped his shoulder on her way out. "Don't melt that heart of yours too much, Hawk. We still need it armored up." Marcus smirked. "This armor ain't what keeps me alive, it's what I do when I take it off." Imani smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's the lesson the galaxy's been missing." He didn't answer, just stood there feeling the warmth from behind the glass, a fragile reminder that even surrounded by cold metal, a human heart could still burn bright enough to light the dark. The summons came at dawn. Marcus woke to the hiss of the ship's intercom, the metallic voice cutting through the quiet. "Sergeant Jefferson." "A report to Command Hall 1 immediately." He sat up slowly, the weight of the words pressing down on him like the ship's gravity had doubled. Lashonda stood by the doorway, her face unreadable. "They called it a hearing," she said. "But you know what that means." Marcus exhaled, running a hand over his face. "Yeah. A trial with better lighting." She gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You got this, Hawk. Just keep that fire steady." He nodded, tightening the straps of his uniform. His reflection in the small mirror showed a man caught between defiance and fatigue. Dark eyes clear, jaw set, every scar a quiet argument against surrender. The command hall was colder than any battlefield. Polished steel walls gleamed under white lights, and every footstep echoed like a drumbeat. At the center stood Colonel Merrin, rigid as a blade, surrounded by officers whose expressions were carved from ice. "Sergeant Marcus Jefferson," Merrin began, his tone clipped. "You stand here accused of violating Article 12, interference with non-human entities during active engagement. You knowingly disobeyed orders, endangered mission integrity, and compromised human military protocol." Marcus straightened. "I acted to save a life, sir," Nothing more. Merrin's eyes narrowed. A Cathari life, an enemy life. Tell me, Sergeant, do you believe compassion trumps duty? Marcus's voice didn't waver. I believe duty without compassion ain't worth the uniform. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Merrin's gaze hardened. You presume to redefine military doctrine? No, sir, Marcus replied. I'm just trying to live up to the part of it that says we protect the innocent. Merrin slammed a hand against the table. That creature is not innocent, it is alien, unknown. Marcus met his eyes. So were we once, to someone. The silence that followed was heavy. Imani and Lashonda stood at the back of the room, watching. Marcus could feel their quiet strength holding him upright. Merrin folded his arms. You're bold, Sergeant, but boldness without restraint is chaos. You broke the chain of command. Sometimes the chain's rusted, sir, Marcus said, voice calm but firm. Sometimes it's been used to choke the wrong people. That drew a collective breath from the room. Merrin's jaw flexed, but instead of shouting, he studied Marcus with something between irritation and curiosity. You think your warmth, your sentimentality, will fix the universe? Marcus took a slow breath, then spoke the words that had lived in him since childhood. If warmth is weakness, sir, then maybe the universe needs more of it. Imani's lips curved into a faint, proud smile. Even Merrin seemed momentarily struck. He turned away, pacing once before facing the tribunal. Sergeant Jefferson, your actions, while insubordinate, resulted in no loss of human life. The being you rescued remains under study and poses no current threat. Against my judgment, higher command has chosen not to discharge you. Marcus blinked. Sir? You are reassigned, Merrin continued. Effective immediately, you will serve as security liaison for the Umoja's diplomatic escort to the Cathari sector. Consider it poetic irony. A ripple of quiet amusement crossed the officers. Marcus didn't smile. Understood, sir. Merrin's tone softened just slightly. You think mercy makes you strong. I hope you're right, Sergeant, for all our sakes. He dismissed the court with a curt gesture. Lashonda approached Marcus as the others filed out. They reassigned you to the front line of politics? He gave a low chuckle. I guess they want me close enough to learn the cost of my mouth. Imani joined them, arms crossed. Or maybe they finally realized warmth travels farther than orders. Marcus glanced once more toward the sealed door of the hearing room. Maybe. But if I'm being sent to bridge two worlds, I'll start the same way I did in that storm. One heartbeat at a time. He turned to walk down the corridor, boots echoing softly against the metal floor, the hum of the ship following him like a pulse. The cold halls of authority were behind him now, but the weight of choice and the fragile hope it carried burned steady inside his chest. The Umoja drifted through the void, like a whisper between stars. Days bled into one another, quiet shifts, muted chatter, the low hum of engines that felt more like a pulse than machinery. Marcus spent most of his time near the containment wing, where Tavi rested. Though officially classified as xeno-juvenile specimen, Marcus refused to call him anything but kid. Labels made distance, names made connection. He sat beside the observation glass, tapping rhythm on the metal table with his fingers, a steady beat, soft but deliberate. Old habits. Back home in Atlanta, he used to drum like that on the porch railing, letting the rhythm chase away silence. You do that when you're nervous, Lashonda said from the doorway, holding 2 cups of caf. She handed him one. Your rhythm gives you away, he smirked. Maybe I'm just keeping time for the universe. Tavi stirred inside the enclosure, the faint glow beneath his translucent skin pulsing in sync with Marcus's tapping. Imani looked up from her console. There it is again. His vitals react every time you make sound. Marcus leaned forward. You think he's feeling it? Not feeling, Imani said, eyes fixed on the readouts. Responding, like resonance. Frequency recognition, maybe. Marcus chuckled quietly. So what you're saying is he's got a little groove in him. Lashonda rolled her eyes. Don't turn this into one of your porch jam sessions, Hawk. He grinned and started humming, low at first, a blues tone that rolled out of him instinctively. the kind of melody his grandma used to sing while stirring gumbo, smooth and aching with warmth. The hum filled the sterile room like sunlight sneaking through blinds. Then something unexpected. A soft vibration rippled from Tavi's chest, not words but a tone, gentle and layered, like wind over glass. Marcus froze. The sound harmonized with his hum, finding the same pitch and riding it upward. Imani's eyes widened. "He's singing," Marcus whispered. "No way." He continued the tune, testing, and the hatchling followed, matching tone for tone. It wasn't imitation, it was conversation. Two voices weaving through cold air, finding each other in the emptiness. Lashonda's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard from something not human." Marcus smiled, but behind the warmth was wonder. Maybe music ain't human. Maybe it's just universal. For a few minutes, nothing else existed. The ship, the war, the cold, all of it faded, replaced by rhythm. When the melody ended, Tavi blinked, his glow dimming softly, and let out a small chirp that sounded almost like laughter. Imani exhaled, breaking the silence. "I've been in xenobiology for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like this. He's not just reacting, and he's bonding." Marcus's tone turned thoughtful. "He learned my warmth first. Maybe now he's learning my sound." Lashonda sat down beside him, her voice quiet. "You know what this means, right? Command's gonna see this as data, not connection. Be careful how much they see." "I ain't hiding him," Marcus said, eyes still on the hatchling. "If we start hiding warmth, we'll never find it again." Imani looked between them, conflicted. "Then make sure you don't give them a reason to take him away." Marcus nodded, but his gaze stayed on Tavi, whose small fingers now pressed gently against the glass, mimicking Marcus's movements. He raised his own hand, palm against the barrier, feeling the hum of life on the other side. "You're something else, little man," he said softly. "Got a voice straight out the stars?" Tavi made a soft trill, melodic and curious. Marcus laughed quietly. "Yeah, I hear you. Guess the galaxy's finally listening too." Lashonda leaned back, sipping her caf. "You think this'll change anything?" Marcus tilted his head, still smiling. "Change starts with a note, Sergeant. And sometimes that's all it takes." The hum of the engines blended with the echo of the song, carrying it through the ship like a secret prayer. Somewhere beyond the walls, space kept its silence, but inside Umoja, two species had just spoken the same language for the first time. Weeks passed, and Umoja docked at the orbital station Harambe 2, a vast steel ring hanging above the blue-white planet of Cathara. It was meant to be neutral ground, the first shared space between humans and the Cathari. But neutrality was only metal deep. Suspicion floated in every corridor, a chill that no heater could melt. Marcus stood by the observation deck, watching Cathari ships gliding past like shards of moonlight. Lashonda joined him, carrying 2 bowls of steaming stew. "You've been staring at them for an hour," she said. "You planning on waving or just vibing from afar?" He chuckled. "Trying to figure out how to make peace with folks who still think we're the monsters." "Story of our people, Hawk," she said, handing him a bowl. "Ain't new, just cosmic now." He smiled faintly, tasting the stew. "You put pepper in this?" "Of course. Even peace talks need flavor." Tavi sat nearby, perched on the bench, wrapped in a light thermal cloak. His skin glowed softly, and his head tilted as he watched Marcus eat. Imani entered carrying a datapad. "He's been mimicking human gestures," she said, amused. "Last night he tried to clap along to music in the mess hall." Marcus grinned. "Oh, he got rhythm. You just wait till he hears real drums." Lashonda smirked. "You mean that old-school stuff your grandma used to play?" "Exactly that," Marcus replied. "Back home, rhythm ain't just sound, it's memory. It's how we talk when words fall short." Imani leaned against the wall. "Funny you say that. The Cathari elders requested a cultural exchange. They want to understand our auditory bonding methods. Guess they mean music." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Music? That's how they want to start?" "Apparently your little duet with Tavi made its rounds," she said. "They're curious." Later that evening, the human delegation gathered in a circular hall filled with low amber light. The air smelled faintly of salt and mineral dust, the Cathari equivalent of incense. Across the room, alien figures shimmered, tall, graceful, their features translucent, eyes luminous like molten glass. One stepped forward, wearing what looked like woven silver reeds across her shoulders. "We heard the Warm One sings," she said, her voice melodic. Marcus hesitated, unsure if she was joking or serious. "Guess word travels faster than I thought." The alien inclined her head. "Sound travels faster in hearts than in air," Lashonda whispered. "That's poetic as hell." Imani nudged her. "Behave." Marcus took a deep breath. "All right," he said. "If they want a song, they'll get one." He pulled a small device from his belt, a harmonizer salvaged from the ship's comms, and adjusted it until a deep hum filled the hall. He began softly, tapping his thigh, letting the rhythm find him. A slow, rolling beat like a train crossing night tracks. His voice followed, low, rich, full of worn, smooth pain and hope. He sang an old tune his grandmother loved. "Keep the fire burning, even when the night's too long." The melody wrapped the hall in warmth. The Cathari listened, unmoving at first. Then one by one they began to hum back, their voices layering like waves. The air shimmered with sound. Tavi stepped forward, eyes glowing brighter, and joined with a pure tone that rose above them all. The humans fell silent, awe spreading across faces hardened by war. The Cathari elder smiled, her translucent cheeks glinting faintly. "Your warmth sings truth," she said. "Perhaps peace is not made, and it is remembered." When the song faded, no one spoke for a long time. Lashonda wiped her eyes quietly. "I ain't cried since basic training," she muttered. Imani whispered, "You just saw history." Marcus looked around the hall, at humans and Cathari standing together, the space between them softened by rhythm and breath. "Nah," he said softly. "We just saw people finally listening." Later, as the gathering dispersed, a small Cathari child approached Tavi, chirping in excitement. The two reached out, their fingers brushing in quiet wonder. Marcus watched them, his heart heavy with something between pride and prayer. He turned to Lashonda. "You think this'll last?" She shrugged, but her smile was genuine. "If it don't, we'll just sing louder." For the first time since the cold of Cathara Prime, Marcus felt the warmth spreading beyond his chest, into the hearts of others, into the spaces between species, and somewhere deep inside, he knew the song had only just begun. The days after the exchange were supposed to bring calm, but instead they brought whispers. What had begun as harmony started to divide the station. In the mess halls, soldiers argued over whether Marcus's song had been diplomacy or disgrace. In the lower decks, traders sold recordings of the event, calling it the Warm One's Hymn. The Cathari loved it. Some humans didn't. Marcus walked through the corridors of Harambe II, feeling the weight of stairs. He wasn't used to being famous or infamous. Lashonda fell into step beside him. "You seeing the news feeds?" she asked. "They're calling you a symbol of unity." He smirked. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "Depends," she said. "Some folks think unity's code for betrayal." Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "People hate what they don't understand." Same tune, different verse. In the command wing, tension was thicker. Colonel Merrin's holographic message arrived with clipped precision. "Maintain neutrality. Do not interfere in cultural exchanges beyond approved protocol." The translation was clear. "Don't sing again." Imani caught him reading it. "You expected gratitude?" "I expected sense," he said. "You build bridges. Somebody always complains about the toll." She smiled faintly, but her eyes carried worry. "Just watch yourself, Hawk. The higher-ups don't like soldiers who turn into symbols. Makes them nervous." Meanwhile, Tavi had become the center of quiet fascination. Scientists studied him daily, yet he always looked for Marcus when frightened or tired. Marcus would hum softly, and Tavi's glow would steady again. Even the medtechs began to call him the Warm One's child. One evening, as Marcus left the research wing, a voice stopped him. "You think you're saving them, Jefferson?" It was Lieutenant Greer, tall, pale, the kind of man who thought discipline meant disdain. Marcus turned slowly. Didn't realize compassion needed saving. Greer stepped closer, eyes hard. "You humiliate our uniform every time you play hero for an alien. They killed humans. You remember that?" Marcus kept his tone calm. "And we killed theirs. The difference is, I'm trying to stop counting." Greer sneered. "You think they'll see you as some noble savior? They'll use you until you're convenient, then forget your name." Marcus's jaw tightened. "They can forget my name long as they remember the warmth." Greer leaned in, voice low. "You're too soft for this life, Jefferson. You people always think feeling means strength." The words hung heavy. Marcus's hand twitched, but he didn't rise to it. He just stared at Greer until the man turned away, muttering curses. LaShonda, who had been watching from the corner, approached slowly. "You handled that better than I would have," she said. "Not worth losing my soul over," Marcus replied. "Cold hearts don't need help freezing." Later that night, the mess hall buzzed with rumors. Someone had leaked footage of Marcus's confrontation, twisting his words into rebellion. The whispers became accusations. A few soldiers refused to eat near him, others nodded with quiet respect. Imani found him sitting alone, staring into his cup of reheated stew. "They're scared," she said. "You made them feel something they can't control." Marcus chuckled without humor. "Ain't that the story of every black man who stood for something?" She nodded slowly. "You carry more than your own history, Hawk. Every step you take out there, they see all of us in you. Don't forget that." Her words stayed with him long after she left. He walked back toward the observation deck, where Tavi slept in his chamber, the soft glow pulsing in time with the hum of the ship. Marcus pressed a hand to the glass. "They can fear warmth all they want," he murmured. "Doesn't change the fire." Behind him, the intercom crackled with static before a new message came through. "Unidentified movement near the outer hull. Possible sabotage attempt." Marcus's heart jumped. LaShonda's voice shouted through the channel, urgent. "All units to deck 12. "We've got trouble." He turned, eyes narrowing. "Guess peace don't come easy," he muttered, sprinting toward the corridor. The hum of the ship shifted to an uneasy growl, and for the first time since the song, Marcus felt the cold returning, not from space this time, but from hearts unwilling to change. The alarm's wail carved through the corridors, sharp and metallic. Marcus sprinted down the narrow passageway, boots hammering against steel, LaShonda right behind him. The red emergency lights pulsed in rhythm with his heart, painting everything in crimson flashes. "Sabotage on deck 12!" she shouted over the noise. "Power grid's unstable!" They reached the junction where smoke hissed from ruptured cables. The air smelled like burning copper and ozone. Tmani's voice crackled through the comms. "Multiple breaches detected. Life support in sections D through F offline. Get out of there." Marcus tore open a maintenance panel. "Can't. Tavi's chamber's on F." LaShonda grabbed his shoulder. "You go in there, you might not come out." He met her gaze, steady. "You know I can't leave him." She cursed under her breath. "Fine, I'm coming with you." "Somebody's got to keep your stubborn self alive." They pushed through the flickering corridors, the ship groaning under strain. Sparks showered from overhead conduits. Somewhere distant, muffled explosions rattled the hull. The Umoja wasn't built for war anymore. It was supposed to carry peace, but old ghosts had found their way back on board. Imani's voice came again, tense. "We've confirmed it. Internal sabotage. Someone's trying to force a detonation sequence near the Cathari delegation wing." Marcus clenched his teeth. "Greer." "What?" LaShonda asked, panting. "I saw his crew near the power cells yesterday. He's been running his mouth about purity and betrayal." LaShonda spat. "That fool's about to start a whole new war." They rounded a corner and found Greer and two others working frantically at a console, faces lit by the pale glow of exposed circuits. "Step away!" Marcus shouted. Greer turned, eyes wild. "You don't understand. They're using us, Jefferson." "Every song, every handshake, as it's a trick." Marcus raised his weapon but didn't aim to kill. "Cut the power lines, not the peace. Walk away before you burn everything we built. Greer's lip curled. You already burned it, singing to them like a pet. He pressed a button on the control pad. Alarms shrieked louder. The detonation timer blinked red. Wo-003 ooze. Lashonda cursed. You just doomed us all. Greer stepped back, trembling. Better ashes than surrender. Marcus moved fast. He tackled Greer, slamming the pad from his hands. The fight was brutal, desperate. No tactics, just will. Greer landed a hit across Marcus's jaw, shouting, You're a traitor. Marcus pinned him, breath ragged. No, I'm human. That still means something to you? Lashonda fired a stun round into the console, shorting the timer with a crack of blue light. Sparks exploded, throwing all of them backward. Smoke filled the corridor. When Marcus rose, Greer was unconscious, his uniform scorched. Timer's fried, Lashonda coughed, but power's bleeding into the hull. We've got to get to the escape wing before it vents. Not yet, Marcus said. Tavi. They reached the containment chamber just as the lights flickered out. Imani's voice broke through static. Hull breach in Section F imminent. You've got 60 seconds. Marcus smashed the manual override, forcing the doors open. Inside, Tavi was curled against the glass, his glow weak and trembling. Hey, little man, Marcus said, voice soft despite the chaos. Time to go. The hatchling's small eyes opened, unfocused but trusting. Marcus lifted him gently, wrapping the cloak tighter. Got you. Lashonda's voice cracked. 30 seconds. They ran, the corridor trembling beneath their feet. The air grew thin, edges of frost forming along the walls. At the docking bay, Imani waited, waving them toward the shuttle. Move! Marcus handed Tavi to her as the floor shuddered. A deep, bone-vibrating sound echoed, the ship's heart breaking. He stumbled into the shuttle, Lashonda sealing the hatch behind them. Through the viewport he saw Umoja burning, a silent flower of fire blooming against the void. As the shuttle pulled away, Marcus pressed a hand over his chest, feeling the faint warmth of the alien child against him. His throat tightened. We tried to build peace, he murmured, and they tried to kill it. Lashonda, eyes on the flames, whispered, Then we build it again. The explosion's light faded, leaving only darkness and the echo of promise. Fragile, but still alive in the void. The shuttle cut through the void, battered but alive. Inside, silence held them tighter than gravity. Marcus sat strapped beside Imani, Tavi nestled against his chest beneath the thermal cloak. The hatchling's glow flickered faintly, steady, but weaker than before. Every time Marcus felt the child's trembling breath, his own heart clenched harder. Lashonda leaned forward from the pilot's seat. Hull's stable, but we're leaking power. Nearest habitable point's an old research post on Cathara's northern pole. Marcus nodded. Take us there. Imani frowned. That place was abandoned after the Thor floods. Temperatures down there hit -90. Still better than the vacuum, Marcus said. We'll make it. The shuttle rattled violently as it entered the planet's thin atmosphere. Flames licked the windows before the heat shields gave way to endless white. Ice fields stretched in every direction, glimmering like broken glass under the dim light. When they landed, the sound was a groan, metal against frozen ground. The airlock hissed open to a wind that cut through layers like knives. Marcus stepped out first, carrying Tavi inside his suit's chest plate. The cold bit through instantly, sharp and absolute. Imani and Lashonda followed, dragging emergency crates toward the half-buried outpost. Inside, the walls were covered in frost, machinery long dead. The emergency heaters sputtered but held. Imani worked fast to restore oxygen flow while Lashonda sealed the breach. Marcus knelt by one of the old consoles, laying Tavi on a thermal pad. The child's glow had dimmed to a faint shimmer. Marcus could barely hear his small breath. Panic twisted his stomach. Come on, little one, he whispered, rubbing his palms together. Stay with me. Imani checked her readings, her voice low and grim. His body temps plummeting. He can't regulate in this cold. Marcus tore open the heating coils from his own suit. Then take mine. Use the armor core. Lashonda's head snapped up. You do that, you'll freeze in minutes. Marcus met her gaze, calm and steady. I'll manage. He won't. He unclipped the chest plate. the warmth draining instantly. His breath came out as fog, each exhale thinner than the last. He wrapped the glowing coils around Tavi, pressing him against his bare undersuit. The chill struck deep, turning pain into numbness. Imani's voice broke. "Marcus, stop. You're not just losing heat. You're losing time." He shook his head, eyes locked on the hatchling. "He needs warmth more than I do." Lashonda crouched beside him, her voice trembling between anger and grief. "You can't save everybody, Hawk." He smiled faintly. "Didn't say I could. Just said I'd try." Minutes passed like hours. Frost crept across the floor, painting everything in pale blue. Marcus's vision blurred, but he stayed upright, arms wrapped tight around the small life pulsing against him. He could feel the faint rhythm growing stronger, Tavi's glow returning, heartbeat syncing with his own. "See that?" he whispered through chattering teeth. "Told you warmth always finds a way." Imani's hand gripped his shoulder. "Marcus, your vitals are dropping, please." He met her eyes with a tired smile. "Ain't the first time the cold tried to take me." His voice softened. "Grandma used to say, when the fire gets low, give it your breath. Guess that's all I'm doing." The hatchling stirred, pressing a small hand to his chest. Then something unexpected. Heat. A soft surge radiated from the creature's palm, spreading warmth back through Marcus's body like sunlight breaking through snow. He gasped, blinking through the haze. Lashonda stared, wide-eyed. He's keeping you warm?" Imani whispered, awed. "He's mirroring your act. He's giving it back." Marcus laughed weakly, tears freezing on his lashes. "Guess I taught him good." The glow filled the room, washing over the cracked metal walls like dawn. Marcus exhaled slowly, feeling the pain ease. He looked down at Tavi, whose tiny eyes blinked up at him. "Stay warm, little man," he murmured. The storm outside howled against the walls, but inside the outpost warmth spread. Fragile, human, and shared. For the first time, the cold didn't win. When Marcus opened his eyes, everything was white. The ceiling, the walls, even the light that poured through the frost-smeared glass. For a moment he thought he'd crossed into something beyond cold or warmth, some quiet place in between. Then he felt the gentle pulse of heat against his palm and realized he was still alive. Imani's voice broke the silence. "Welcome back, hero." He turned his head slowly, muscles stiff and heavy. Imani stood beside the medbay console, her hair tied back, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but glowing with relief. "How long?" 2 days, she said. "We thought we lost you halfway through the night. Tavi wouldn't leave your side. Every time we tried to move him, he cried until the monitors spiked. Marcus's throat felt like sandpaper. He kept me alive?" Imani nodded, her smile soft. "Guess he learned from the best." The memory came back in fragments. The storm, the cold, the way the hatchling's warmth had flowed into him. Marcus looked over to where Tavi now rested in a smaller chamber beside the bed. The child's glow was steady, bright, a soft heartbeat of light that filled the sterile room with color. Lashonda entered quietly, carrying a tray of broth that smelled faintly of spice and memory. "Doctor says you'll be walking again soon. Don't go dying on me before I collect my bet." Marcus groaned. "You placed bets?" "Of course," she said, grinning. "Half the station said you'd freeze." "I said you'd come back just to annoy Marin again." Imani chuckled. "She's not wrong." Marcus smiled, though his voice stayed low. "I didn't do it to be a hero. Just couldn't let him go cold." Lashonda's grin softened. "You and that boy. Y'all make folks remember what heart looks like. Been a long time since this crew had something to believe in." He let that sit in the quiet that followed. Outside the medbay window, the endless ice of Cathara stretched beneath a sky painted in soft auroras. The colors reminded him of home, not the skyline of Atlanta, but the glow of porch lights at dusk, laughter spilling through screen doors, the warmth of Sunday dinners when every dish told a story. He closed his eyes and saw his grandmother's face again. "Boy," she'd say, "you don't measure life by what you hold. You measure it by what you keep warm." Imani checked the monitors. "Vitals are strong. Once command clears it, We'll move you to orbit for debrief." Marcus frowned. "Debrief? After all this, they still want reports?" Lashonda leaned on the wall. "You saved a Cathari child and stopped a human mutiny. Trust me, they want more than reports. They want headlines." "Let them write whatever they want," Marcus said, "long as they spell his name right." Imani's expression grew thoughtful. "You know, there's talk about you and Tavi being invited to meet the Cathari Queen. Word is she's calling this the Bond of Fire." Marcus blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Bond of Fire, huh? Grandma would have liked that." Lashonda smirked. "Better than that fool who took his armor off." Imani shook her head, smiling. "Don't push him. He still looks like he wrestled a glacier." Marcus turned toward Tavi's chamber. The child was awake now, pressing a small hand against the glass. Marcus lifted his own, mirroring it. The warmth from the contact felt real even through the barrier, proof that some bonds didn't need words, only memory. "You did good, kid," he whispered. "Real good." Tavi chirped softly, eyes reflecting the aurora light. For a while, none of them spoke. The hum of the machinery was steady, like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. Marcus thought about everything they'd lost, everything they'd found, and the truth that had carried him through it all. Warmth wasn't weakness. It was resistance. It was survival. Lashonda broke the quiet with a low laugh. "You realize you started something, right? Folks are already calling this the Warm War." Marcus smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure it ends with peace." Outside, the auroras danced across the sky, their colors shifting like fire on snow. And for the first time in a long while, the cold didn't feel like an enemy, only a reminder of how far warmth could reach. The invitation arrived quietly, not as a command, but as a gesture. It was from the Cathari Queen, a wordless recognition that spread through the crew like wildfire. A bridge had been built, and now they were being asked to cross it. The journey to the Cathari capital was swift, but for Marcus, every second felt like the weight of centuries. As the ship approached the shimmering city above the alien world, he stood by the observation deck, staring out into the nebula-streaked expanse. His mind drifted back to the storm, to the moment when he had cradled Tavi against his chest, fighting the cold with nothing but instinct. Now they were here on the cusp of a new reality, and he wasn't sure what it would mean for either of them. Tavi, too, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. The hatchling had grown in both size and awareness over the past few days, his small form glowing steadily, his eyes now full of curiosity and intelligence. He watched Marcus with an expression that was no longer just trust, but recognition. "Guess it's time, huh?" Lashonda said from behind him, breaking his reverie. She stood beside him, arms crossed. "You ever thought about what happens next?" Marcus exhaled slowly, his breath misting up the window. "I'm not sure what happens next, but I know I'll be there for him." "Whatever it is." "Good answer," Lashonda said, her tone softening. "You've done more than most could. Just remember, no matter how shiny the future looks, there's still plenty of work left to do." He nodded, though the weight of it was heavier than the gravity of any planet. "I won't forget." The shuttle touched down on a landing platform suspended high above the city. From the window, Marcus could see the strange beauty of the Cathari structures, impossibly tall spires that seemed to grow out of the atmosphere itself, each one pulsating with its own internal rhythm, like the heartbeat of an ancient creature. The Cathari themselves waited in a silent formation, their forms more delicate, more graceful than anything human eyes had seen. As Marcus, Lashonda, and Imani exited the shuttle, the Queen's voice echoed softly through the comm system, her words like music in the air. "You who have bridged the worlds with warmth, come. Come and stand with us, that we may begin anew." They were escorted through the streets by Cathari attendants, their silken garments flowing like liquid light. The city was alive, not just in structure but in sound. A soft hum that seemed to emanate from the very air, creating an atmosphere that felt more alive than static. As they entered the great hall, Marcus felt the weight of every eye upon him. The Cathari Queen, standing atop a raised platform, was an imposing figure, her translucent skin glowing faintly in the dim light, her eyes the color of storm clouds. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, but carried with it the weight of 1,000 years of wisdom. You who have not only shared warmth, but have rekindled it in the hearts of the lost, have proven that the flame of unity can never be extinguished. Will you stand by us, human, in the pursuit of peace? Marcus took a slow, steady breath, his pulse quickening. Tavi shifted in his arms, and Marcus felt the connection between them, not just between species, but between souls. He stepped forward, his voice steady. I stand with you, not as a soldier, not as a savior, but as someone who understands that peace isn't given. It's made step by step, hand by hand. The Queen's eyes softened, a fleeting warmth in the depths of her gaze. Then let us walk together, human, and show the stars what it means to be truly united. As the Cathari delegates stepped forward, Marcus felt something inside him shift. The path ahead was not paved in gold or glory, but in shared struggle. Tavi's small hand gripped his shirt, and Marcus found strength in that tiny act. In that moment he realized that the work, the true work, was just beginning. The Cathari queen extended her hand toward him. Come, she said, let us show the world what peace can truly be. Marcus stepped forward, placing his hand in hers. And for the first time, he understood what it meant to be part of something larger than himself. Peace was not an idea, but a living, breathing connection. And it would grow just as Tavi had, with care, with warmth, and with time. The first steps toward unity came quietly. It wasn't a dramatic speech or a grand gesture. It was a shift in the way people looked at each other. When Marcus, Tavi, and the Cathari delegation returned to Earth's orbit, the tension was palpable. The crew of the Umoja stood in solemn formation, not knowing what to expect, but everyone knew something had changed. The atmosphere wasn't just thick with anticipation, but with the possibility of something new, something better. The day Tavi was introduced to Earth was a day that would change everything. The streets of Atlanta, the city where Marcus had first learned the weight of his name, filled with people of every race and creed. The crowd was quiet at first, unsure of what was to come. But when Tavi stepped from the ship, held gently in Marcus's arms, the crowd went still, every eye on the child. Tavi was no longer just a creature from another world. He had become a symbol, a living testament to what could happen when barriers broke down. His soft, shimmering skin glowed in the morning sun, but it was his eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, that spoke the loudest. Marcus felt a tug at his chest. For the first time since he had held Tavi in that storm, he realized the weight of what had been entrusted to him. The world was watching, not just as an audience, but as potential witnesses to history. As they approached the podium where the Cathari and Earth leaders stood together, Tavi reached out a small hand, the glow of his skin brighter than ever. He turned to Marcus, who smiled softly, rubbing the child's tiny hand. "You ready?" Marcus asked, his voice a whisper. Tavi made a soft chirping sound in reply, then reached for the microphone. Marcus chuckled. "Guess we're all ready then." The crowd remained silent, eyes wide, waiting for the first words to break the silence. Then, without any formal introduction, the Cathari ambassador stepped forward and spoke in his native tongue, his voice smooth and melodic. "Today we stand together, not as species, not as enemies, but as one united force. Through one human's act of compassion, we have found a path to understanding." There was a pause, and then, in the same tone, he turned to Marcus. "Will you speak, warm one?" Marcus hesitated. His heart raced, and he glanced down at Tavi, who seemed to be waiting for him to speak. Slowly, Marcus stepped forward, his boots heavy against the soft ground of Earth, and he met the eyes of those gathered before him. He had no speech, no prepared words, just a feeling. "I'm no hero," Marcus began, his voice steady but soft, the weight of his words carrying more than any title. "I'm just a man who's learning that the only way to survive is to give what you have." No matter the cost. The crowd remained still, listening. Tavi and every soul like him, they remind us that we're not alone, not in our hearts, not in our struggles, and not in our desire for peace. He paused, a lump in his throat. "This isn't the end. It's just the start of something better. For us, for them, for everyone who believes that warmth can light the dark. That's what we're building here today. Not just a bridge, but a future. The silence that followed was thick, but not from uncertainty, from understanding. Slowly, the crowd began to clap. At first, it was hesitant, unsure of how to react. But then, the sound grew, louder, stronger. It was a ripple that would spread far beyond the earth, out to the stars. And there, in that moment, Marcus realized something. It wasn't about proving the world wrong. It wasn't about saving anyone. It was about teaching them to remember their own humanity. Tavi reached out again, his tiny hand brushing Marcus's chest, and for a moment Marcus could feel his heartbeat sync with the child's glow. The future was no longer something they could only hope for. It was a living, breathing force, and they had built it together. The applause didn't stop for minutes, and when it did, it wasn't a cry of victory. It was the sound of something real beginning, something born from warmth, from unity, from love. The first steps had been taken. Now they would walk forward side by side, with a child who had reminded them all that the most powerful weapon was compassion. Years passed, but the echoes of that moment never quite left Marcus. The applause had faded, the speeches had been written, and the world had begun its slow process of healing. But every now and then, when the stars seemed just right, he would find himself looking up, remembering how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. Life after the event with Tavi wasn't as simple as they'd hoped. The world had shifted, but it wasn't a seamless transition. Humanity and the Cathari worked side by side in space, breaking down barriers, trading knowledge, and slowly building the framework of a new interstellar alliance. But even the brightest future couldn't come without its challenges. Marcus stood on the porch of his home in Atlanta, staring out over the city. It was a quiet morning, the sun still low, the streets below bustling with life. A breeze tugged at the edges of his worn shirt, the scent of warm asphalt mixed with the scent of morning dew. Behind him, LaShonda entered with 2 mugs of coffee. She passed him one, and he took it with a nod. "You've been staring at that skyline for hours," she said, leaning on the railing beside him. "What's going through that head of yours?" He took a slow sip, the warm liquid grounding him in the moment. "Just thinking about what we built. What we're still building." He sighed, glancing back down at the streets below. "It's easy to think we've done everything, but it feels like we're just getting started." LaShonda followed his gaze. "I know. Sometimes it feels like the harder work is just beginning. Not everyone's on board with this piece, Hawk. You know that, right?" "I do," Marcus said quietly. "But every day, more people are starting to see. They're feeling it." He paused, remembering Tavi, the tiny creature who had taught them all what it meant to share warmth. "We all came from something bigger than ourselves." LaShonda smiled, her eyes softer than they had been in years. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I have to," Marcus replied. "We have to. If we don't, we'll lose everything we fought for." They stood there in silence for a while, the city stretching out beneath them. Then, just as Marcus was about to speak again, a small voice interrupted him. "Uncle Hawk." Marcus turned to see a young boy running up the steps. He had the same eyes as Tavi, bright, curious, full of wonder. Marcus knelt down as the child reached him, picking him up in his arms. "What's up, little man?" The child smiled. "Grandma says I'm big enough to help. Help with the next thing." Marcus chuckled, ruffling his hair. "The next thing, huh? Guess we'll see what that looks like." The boy's bright smile never faded. "I'm ready, Uncle Hawk. I'm ready to help." Marcus held him a little tighter. This, he thought, this is the legacy. The legacy wasn't just in the peace talks or the agreements signed. It wasn't in the speeches or the history books. It was in the hearts of the next generation, children who would grow up knowing the importance of warmth, empathy, and connection. "Yeah, you're ready," Marcus said softly. "We all are." The years had changed him, and the world had changed with him. The fire that had burned in him on Cathara Prime, that raw, unrelenting warmth, had spread into the lives of so many others. What they had built wasn't perfect. It wasn't foolproof, but it was real. and that was enough. The legacy of the fire was alive in every step forward, every decision made to nurture, to connect, to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. Every new partnership, every handshake, every moment of understanding between species was a victory, and it would continue. And when the next generation stood, just as ready and hopeful as the one before, Marcus knew the flame would never die. They would carry it forward. The years had passed, and yet some things still felt like they were just beginning. Marcus stood on the outskirts of the city, watching the skyline stretch high into the horizon, a mix of old brick and sleek new spires, all rising toward the same sky. The weight of his years in the service was still there, tucked deep in his bones, but so too was something else, something brighter. The shuttle that brought him back to Earth after months of negotiations and meetings came to a soft stop at the landing pad. He hadn't really known what he would find upon his return, but he had always known one thing. Peace wasn't something you achieved. It was something you built piece by piece, moment by moment, choice by choice. He stepped off the shuttle, the cool breeze of a late afternoon brushing against his face. Behind him, the low hum of the craft's engines died down, replaced by the sounds of the city, distant traffic, the chatter of a market nearby, the life of Earth. A gentle warmth lingered in the air. "Lashonda Imani," he said quietly, "you think we really did it, or are we just fooling ourselves?" Lashonda was standing near the base of the shuttle, arms folded, her grin never far from her face. "Who knows, Hawk? But we tried, and that's more than most can say. We built it. Ain't no going back now." Imani, standing beside her, nodded. "There's no way to make everyone happy, Marcus. But maybe we don't have to. Maybe we just need to keep making it better, step by step." Marcus took a deep breath. He had heard these words many times before, but somehow today they felt like something more, something he could trust. He glanced over at Lashonda. "I hear there's a ceremony tomorrow," he said, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. "Cathari delegations in town. Garth the Queen herself coming, and they want me to speak again. Are you ready for that?" Lashonda asked. Marcus chuckled softly. "Not really, but you don't get to be ready for these things, do you? They come, and you do the best you can with what's in front of you." Imani smiled and turned to him. "That's what you've always done." He nodded, his thoughts turning inward for a moment. For all the progress they'd made, there was still so much more to do. Peace was a fragile thing, beautiful, but always on the edge of breaking. And it wasn't just about the negotiations or the grand gestures. It was the quiet moments, the ones that required real courage. Sitting down and listening to someone who didn't agree with you, extending your hand when you didn't know if it would be accepted. Behind him, a small voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts. "Uncle Marcus!" Marcus turned to see Tavi, now a young child, walking toward him slowly, hands outstretched. His glow was softer now, but his eyes still carried that same spark, that same connection. Marcus knelt down, arms open. "You ready for this?" he asked softly. Tavi nodded, his tiny hand gripping Marcus's. "Ready, Uncle Marcus. I can help now." Marcus smiled as he lifted Tavi into his arms, feeling the warmth of the child's small form against his chest. It wasn't just the warmth of a physical connection, it was something deeper. A bond, not just between two species, but between souls that had come together to do something extraordinary. As he held Tavi, the soft hum of the world around them felt more alive than ever. The sound of people moving forward, working together, building something that would endure, a future that wasn't defined by borders or fear, but by love and shared purpose. "Yeah," Marcus said, eyes scanning the horizon, his voice steady and full of resolve. "We did it, and we'll keep doing it." "For you? For me? For everyone who believes in this?" Tavi looked up at him, his small face serious and yet hopeful. "We'll keep building, right?" "Right," Marcus said softly. "We'll keep building." And as the sun began to set over the city, casting long shadows that stretched like arms reaching toward each other, Marcus knew that they would. They would keep building, Because just like the fire that had warmed them all through the darkest moments, peace had to be nurtured. It had to be kept alive. And as long as there were people like Tavi, like Lashonda, like Imani, and even like himself, the warmth would never die. And that was the legacy.